Welcome to a TE Development Podcast. Well, hello and welcome. My name's Mark O'Connor and I am a learning and development consultant that particularly focuses on management and leadership development. And I've done that now for about the last 20 years. So sort of the key parts that fall into my job is I do a lot of training, design and delivery, including design and delivery of certificated management and leadership qualifications, level 2 to level 5, if that means anything to you. I'm also a coach. I do a lot of facilitating. I've led change and transformation programs, both in the private and public sector. I, on a more consultancy basis, have worked with organisations in completing learning needs analysis at an individual, team, department and organisational level. I've worked with senior management groups in helping them define competencies. I've worked with companies helping them define their mission, vision and values. I've facilitated process review and improvements, and in fact have developed process review mechanisms with organisations, and have also done some review work of things like their mentor programs and their coaching programs. So yeah, all of my work involved in some form or other under the umbrella of learning and development, with particular focus on management and leadership development. Outside of that, the other things I do is I'm a writer. I have a play published. I am also a musician, predominantly a bass player, and I play in several bands and do session work, and also write music as well. So that's a little bit about myself. Now let's give you a little bit of detail about this podcast. And I guess the first thing is, well, what's the podcast going to be about and who's it aimed at? Well, I hope on one level it's aimed at anybody that has an interest in management and leadership development, or anyone who has an interest in personal development, or anybody that has a management and leadership aspect to their role, particularly if they have a people management aspect to their role. But for me, the real catalyst of putting this program together was to support people who were moving into their first people management role. Now, in particularly the last 15 years where I've been self-employed, I've gone into a lot of organisations and I see a pattern in a lot of these companies, which is when you look at people that get promoted to their first management or leadership role, they don't necessarily get promoted because they are going to be the best person for the role, but they get promoted because of the job that they've been doing. Let me give a crude example. You may have a very successful salesperson who then gets promoted into the sales manager's role. Now, for those of you that have done either or both of those roles, you'll recognise there's a big difference between being a sales representative and then being a sales manager. It looks at very, very different skills. So sometimes this jump into your first management role can be a really big jump. And in fact, there's a lot of occasions where sometimes people find themselves in the position that they are managing a team that the week before they were a member of. And in fact, sometimes they're managing a group of people who also applied for the job and they didn't get it. So it's a really interesting dynamic to start your first management job. Now, I don't mean this as a slur in any way, but a lot of times those people are put into those roles and then they're not given any formal development. In fact, recently I've worked with 2 or 3 organisations where people have been in a management role for 4, 5, 6 years, and they've come on a workshop that I'm running, and this is the first time in those 6 years they've had any formal training or development to help them in the people management part of their role. Now, as I said, it's not a slur, and some of these people could be brilliant managers, and there is something to learning on the job and learning from people around you. And also with the times that we're in now, with training budgets being cut in so many different areas, the question goes, if we've only got so much money to spend, is management and leadership development really a priority in the same way that some of the technical skills that are required, or also some of the legislative requirements of any organisation? So I understand that question, but I want to give you this to think about as well. There's a piece of work that's been developed by Harvard Business School, which is called the Employee Customer Value Chain. Now, this is actually quite a detailed piece of work. I'm going to really oversimplify it just for the purposes of this introduction. What the model says is, well, firstly, if you look at the work they've done, they looked at customers of organisations and they were trying to work out what is it that makes the best customer, the customer that spends the most money, who recommends the most, who is the most loyal. And they gave this customer the label of engaged customer. And when they asked customers who hit this criteria, why are you so engaged with the organisation? Whilst there was many reasons that they gave, the overall largest consistent reason was how they were dealt with at a local level. And by that I mean, how were they dealt with face to face? How were they dealt with on the telephone? That very personal interaction. So you then look at the chain and you look at those staff, the best staff in the organisation, the ones that have the highest level of employee engagement. And Harvard Business School did a piece of work in conjunction with Gallup. And in fact, this piece of work has now become known as the Gallup 12. And up to this stage, Gallup have interviewed now just over 15 million employees, worldwide, sector-wide, industry-wide. And they've asked the question, if you are, truly engaged with the organisation that you work for, what is it? What is happening that's giving you those high levels of engagement? And out of these 12 consistent reasons that come up, at least 8 of them directly and another 2 indirectly is about the relationship between the individual and their line manager. This piece of work showing without question that any member of staff in an organisation is influenced more by their direct line manager than any other person in the organisation. And what that relationship is like directly ties into the level of engagement that that employee has. So the model simply goes, engaged managers equals engaged staff equals engaged customers equals sustained profit and growth if it's a private organisation, if it's a public organisation, however they measure their success. So not only is management and leadership development important, but there is a direct business case for it. There is a direct correlation between having effective managers and leaders and business success. So what we're talking about here is really important. It's really important to the culture and environment we create, but it's also really, really critical to business success. So this podcast is developed to help managers where either they don't get any access to any formal development because the budget isn't there to do so, or if they are going through a management and leadership program or other form of development, then the podcast will work very much alongside it to further support the learning. It's also going to be useful for anybody undertaking a level 2 to level 5 management or leadership qualification, like but not limited to the Institute of Leadership and Management, or ILM. Also, if you're an aspiring manager, so you have your eye on maybe your next role is going to have some people management aspect to it, the podcast will be great for that. But finally, and maybe in probably the most important way, a lot of the areas that I'm going to look at over the coming weeks and months, to me, these are just really good life skills. And, some of the content we're going to go through, I probably use the learning from this as much, if not more, as a father, as a husband, as a member of a band, as someone who directs a play. I mean, the skills that we are looking at are just really, really important. So I really hope, as I said, whilst the catalyst is for people going into their first people management role, I really do hope that a lot of what we look at over the coming weeks and months will just be beneficial to anybody. So what will we look at and what's going to be covered? Well, let me give you a list of a few things. So these are going to be a range of the areas that we're going to include, but certainly not limited to. So we're going to look around how we learn, leadership styles and role modeling leadership styles. We're going to look at management skills, including objective setting, feedback, effective and ethical delegating, allocating work, planning and organising work, resource management. We're going to look at leadership skills, which will include coaching, problem solving and decision making, motivating and engaging teams and individuals. We're going to look at team development. We're going to look at running a team which in relation to diversity and equality. We're going to look at change management, change and innovation, and how to lead change, how to plan change, how to implement change, how to be a role model of change. We're going to look at how to make sure the recruitment and selection process is as fair, as ethical and effective as possible. We're going to look at how to facilitate groups and facilitation skills. And we're going to look at communication. And under communication, we're going to look at face-to-face communication, written communication, storytelling, ethical negotiations, influencing skills, NLP, emotional intelligence, communication styles, presentation skills. So a really good, rounded kind of foundation into management and leadership, but with particular focus on all of the skills that have an impact on how our behaviour comes across. Now, for the good news. Podcast, going to be totally free of charge. And wherever possible, which will be most of the time, is going to be published weekly. It's either going to come out either on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday. However, there are a few things that you can do to help. So the first one is, as the episodes start coming out, first thing would be really, really helpful, and I can't tell you how helpful this is, if you could like the episodes or give them thumbs up, depending on which format that you're looking at it. And it's going to be an audio podcast. It will be on iTunes. It will be on Podbean. A version of it will go up on YouTube. So hopefully, in some form or other, there will be a way that you'll be able to access it. So yeah, firstly, if you give it a thumbs up or like. Once we've got a few episodes as well, if you can write a review on any of those, iTunes, Podbean, that helps so much. And most importantly, if you can share it with friends and colleagues, that probably has a bigger impact than anything else. Now, if you have any learning and development requirements in your organisation as well, we'd love to have the opportunity to discuss your needs and develop a proposal. And we can also provide, depending on location, either face-to-face or online coaching. If you are interested in any of this, or you would like to also inform us about any of the subjects that you would find helpful on this, then please, you can either contact me via email, and that will be Mark, M-A-R-K, at TE Development, so T for Tommy, E for Edward, and then the word development, .co.uk. On Facebook, you will either find us at, if you search TE Development, or at What Makes a Leader, and that's all one word, What Makes a Leader, which is also the title of the podcast. Or on Twitter, you will find us at TE_development. So at TE, so again, T for Tommy, E for Edward, development. We really look forward to your company in the coming weeks and months. We're really excited to get this started. So we look forward to your feedback and your comments, and look forward to the first episode, which will be next week. And we're going to start by looking at learning. Have a good week. TE Development Podcast.